It was almost 2:40 in the morning when Ben Harris pulled his bus into the last stop, a lonely stretch of road at the edge of town where the pavement met the pines. The streetlight there was old, its bulb flickering weakly, casting a circle of gold against the falling snow. And that's where he saw it. The wolf. It stood perfectly still beneath the lamp, tall and gray, its fur silvered by the winter light. The snow drifted around it like ash. It didn't growl or run, it just watched him, calm, unafraid. For a moment, Ben froze behind the wheel. He wasn't sure if it was real, maybe just the long night shifts playing tricks again. But then, it turned its head, slightly ears twitching toward the hum of the bus engine, alive, alert, aware. Every instinct told him to close the doors, to pull away and not look back. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the quiet, or the way its eyes, golden and steady, didn't hold fear or threat. Just a kind of weary knowing. He stayed there for nearly a minute. Both of them caught inside that fragile silence. One man inside the light, one creature standing at the edge of it. When he finally eased the bus back into gear, the wolf stepped backward into the trees. The light swallowed the snow again. And just like that, it was gone. Ben didn't tell anyone. Not his supervisor, not the mechanic he shared coffee with at 3 a.m. He knew what they'd say. "You've been working too many graveyard shifts." But the next night, it happened again. And the night after that. Always at the same place. Always under the same lonely streetlight. After a while, he stopped being afraid. Sometimes he'd talk quietly through the open window. "Long shift tonight, huh?" he'd mutter, half smiling. "You and me both." He didn't expect an answer, of course, but there was something comforting in saying the words out loud, as if the forest was listening. The wolf never came closer, never crossed the curb, never showed its teeth. It simply stood there, still and patient, like it understood that this was all it could share with him, a few quiet minutes in the middle of the night. For months, the routine continued. Snow gave way to frost, frost to slush, and still, every time he pulled in, it was there. It was strange, but also somehow right. He started leaving the headlights off when approaching the stop, so the light from the old lamp could stay undisturbed. The sight of the wolf waiting under it became a part of his shift, as natural as the hiss of the brakes or the hum of the heater. Some nights, when the road was empty and the snow fell soft as dust, Ben found himself thinking, maybe we're both just looking for a little warmth in the cold. He never reached for his phone, never took a picture. Something told him that if he tried to capture it, he'd break whatever quiet understanding they had. And so he simply drove night after night to that same stop at the end of the line, where the light barely touched the darkness, and a lone gray wolf waited just outside of it. He didn't know it yet, but one night that wolf would change everything. The days for Ben Harris all looked the same. He'd wake just before noon, fix a pot of weak coffee, and sit by the small window of his trailer, watching the wind stir through the pines behind the lot. His house was simple, a single-story trailer near the edge of town, cluttered with old bus schedules, mugs that never quite matched, and a half-finished puzzle spread across the dining table. There were photographs on the fridge, one of his late wife taken years ago in front of a mountain lake, and another of his daughter Emily holding her first fishing rod. Ben still talked to both sometimes, not out loud, just in his head, while making coffee or folding laundry. Life had become quiet, predictable, even comfortable in its solitude. But ever since that first night when he saw the wolf under the streetlight, something in his routine had shifted slightly, but unmistakably. He started looking forward to that stop. At 2:30 a.m., while most of the town slept, Ben would steer the bus through the final stretch of his route. The streets were empty, lined with snowbanks, the world silent except for the low growl of the diesel engine. He'd slow down as the last lamp came into view, the one at the end of County Road 9, and squint through the frosty windshield, searching for a gray shape in the distance. Sometimes it was there, standing like a statue under the dim light. Sometimes it wasn't, and he'd feel an odd, quiet disappointment, the same feeling you get when an old friend cancels plans at the last minute. He never told anyone about the wolf. The guys at the depot wouldn't understand. They liked to joke about hunters' traps and putting the fear of God into animals that got too close. Ben didn't see the world that way anymore. He'd seen enough loss to know that fear rarely fixes anything. One evening, while refueling the bus, he overheard two drivers talking. "They're saying wolves are back in Colorado now. Saw one near the interstate. Yeah, the wildlife people reintroduced them. Folks ain't happy." Ben said nothing. But later, as he sat behind the wheel, he thought about that. Maybe this wolf wasn't lost at all. Maybe it was one of those returning, finding its way home to land that used to belong to its kind. That idea made him strangely proud. Over the next few weeks, the sightings became routine. The wolf never came closer than 30 feet, never crossed into the road. It only stood there, a silent witness to Ben's nightly arrival. One night, after finishing his route, he parked the bus at the terminal, poured the last of his coffee, and opened the old wildlife manual his wife once used when she volunteered at a nature center. He read that wolves communicate in complex ways, through posture, gaze, even silence. He smiled. "Guess that explains it," he murmured. "You've been talking all along." Sometimes he wondered why the wolf stayed in that one spot. Was it drawn to the light? The sound of the bus? Or maybe like him, it just needed something familiar in the long, empty nights. He began to imagine its story. Maybe it had lost its pack. Maybe it was searching for something too. There was comfort in that thought, the idea that two solitary souls could share the same piece of night without breaking it. One early morning, as snow began to fall again, Ben pulled up to the stop and rolled his window halfway down. The air was cold enough to sting, but he didn't mind. The wolf stood there calm, almost curious. "We keep meeting like this," he said quietly, smiling. "I guess we're both creatures of habit." The wolf tilted its head slightly, as if listening. For a moment, the streetlight flickered and the snow thickened, and the line between man and wild blurred just for a heartbeat. Then, as the first hint of dawn painted the horizon pale blue, the wolf turned and disappeared between the trees. Ben sat there a long while, the engine idling softly. The world felt still and strangely full. He didn't know it yet, but that night would be one of the last calm nights before everything changed. The snow that week was heavier than usual. By midnight, the road looked like a long white ribbon stretching endlessly into the dark. Ben drove slower than normal wipers, beating a steady rhythm, his headlights carving a tunnel through the falling snow. At the final stop, the familiar glow of the old streetlight appeared ahead, warm and faint in the storm. He smiled to himself. He didn't expect to see the wolf tonight. The cold was brutal, the wind sharp enough to slice through bone. But when he pulled in there, it was standing right under the light, its fur dusted in snow, still and calm as ever. Ben turned off the engine, listening to the hum fade into silence. For a while, he just sat there watching the snow swirl around them both. The world felt impossibly quiet, no traffic, no sound but the wind. He reached for his thermos, then his old leather wallet slipped from his jacket pocket and fell onto the bus floor. He didn't notice, not in that dim light, not with the snow tapping softly on the windows. When he finally finished his route and parked back at the depot, the seat beside him was empty, and so was his pocket. His heart sank. Inside that wallet wasn't much money, but it held something far more important, an old photograph of his wife folded and worn from years of keeping it close. He retraced his steps, turned on his flashlight, checked under the seats, under the pedals, nothing. The next morning, when the storm cleared, Ben drove back to the stop on his own time. The streetlight was still standing, leaning slightly, its bulb still flickering in the pale dawn. And there, half buried in snow right at the base of the lamp, was his wallet. He froze. It looked placed there, not dropped. The leather was damp, the corners chewed slightly as if something had carried it gently in its mouth. He crouched, picked it up with shaking hands, brushed away the snow, and opened it. Everything was there: his license, his cards, the photo. The only thing missing was a few dollar bills, soggy and torn from the wet. He let out a shaky laugh. Guess I got off easy. That night, curiosity got the better of him. He asked the local transit office if he could check the security camera at the stop, one of those small motion sensors installed after vandals broke the lamp years ago. The footage was grainy black and white, but clear enough. The bus had pulled away. The light flickered. A few minutes later, a shape appeared from the tree line, the wolf. It approached the spot where Ben had parked nose low to the ground, sniffing. Then, it found something, the wallet half buried in slush. Ben watched breathless as the wolf nudged it with its muzzle, pulled it out of the puddle, and carried it a few steps toward the streetlight. It dropped it neatly at the base of the pole, sniffed once more, and stood there a moment, looking into the darkness where the bus had gone before walking back into the woods. Ben replayed the clip 3 times, then again. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When he told the other drivers at the depot, they chuckled. Must have smelled the leather. Probably thought it was food. You sure it wasn't a raccoon? Ben just smiled, pocketing the wallet. He didn't argue. Some things didn't need explaining. That night when he pulled into the stop again, the streetlight glowed steady for the first time in months. No flicker, no hum. The wolf wasn't there. But Ben still rolled down his window, the cold biting his cheeks, and whispered into the quiet, "Thanks for looking out for me." A gust of wind swept across the road, rustling the snow-covered pines. And somewhere far off in the forest came a soft, distant howl, not loud, not wild, just a sound like acknowledgement. He smiled. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. Word about Ben's story spread faster than he expected. It started small, a casual conversation over coffee at the depot, a half-joking remark from a coworker. "Hey, we got a wolf chauffeur now," but before long, someone mentioned it at the diner, and then someone else posted a clip of the grainy security footage online. By the end of the week, half the town had seen it. The video was only 15 seconds long, the wolf stepping into frame, sniffing the ground, dragging the wallet, gently placing it under the streetlight. The lamplight flickered once, then steadied as if holding its breath. It wasn't spectacular. No drama, no background music, just quiet proof that something rare, something unexplainably kind had happened in the middle of the night. At first, the reactions were predictable. "It's just instinct," one man said. "Probably smelled food." "Yeah, right," another added. "A wild wolf playing Good Samaritan. Come on." But there were others, people who didn't laugh. A woman from the library commented online, "Maybe it wasn't instinct. Maybe it's awareness. Maybe we've forgotten the difference." Ben didn't care about debates. He wasn't chasing fame or theories. He'd seen what he'd seen, and that was enough. Still, people started stopping him at the grocery store, at the gas station. "You're the bus guy, right? You really think it meant to help you?" He'd smile politely and shrug. "I think it meant to do what felt right, whatever that was." That simple answer made people pause. One morning, the local paper called. A reporter wanted to do a short piece, local bus driver and the streetlight wolf. Ben agreed reluctantly. He didn't like attention, but he figured maybe, just maybe, it would make people think twice before fearing everything wild. The article ran on Sunday. A small headline, a photo of Ben standing near the streetlight, snow falling softly around him. They printed one still frame from the video, the wolf with its head bowed, placing the wallet on the ground. Below it, a quote from Ben. "It didn't owe me anything, but maybe kindness doesn't need a reason." The story made its way across social media. A wildlife conservation group shared it with the caption, "A reminder that coexistence is possible." Not everyone agreed. A few residents near the woods demanded the authorities remove the wolf before someone gets hurt. Ben attended the town meeting that followed. The room smelled of old coffee and nervous energy. A dozen people argued about safety fences and fear. When it was his turn to speak, Ben stood up slowly, his voice steady but soft. "I've seen that wolf more times than I can count. It never once came close. It never once looked angry. We share the same road, that's all. Maybe we can share the same light too." The room went silent for a moment. Then someone clapped. Another followed. Not everyone was convinced, but the tension eased. That winter animal control decided against setting traps. They posted new signs instead. Wildlife crossing area, reduce speed. Respect distance. Ben smiled when he saw them on his route. The world didn't change overnight, but something had shifted subtle quiet, like a thaw under the snow. From then on, the locals began calling it the Streetlight wolf. It became part of the town's story, a little piece of folklore wrapped in truth. And every time Ben drove through that last stretch of road, he'd glance at the lamp glowing steady against the dark and wonder if the wolf still wandered nearby unseen, but still listening. Ben's last week on the job came quietly. No parties, no speeches, just a new driver shadowing his route and a final stack of paperwork waiting at the depot. After 30 years behind the wheel, he didn't need a celebration. He only wanted one more night, one last run down the stretch of road that had come to feel like home. That evening, the sun sank early behind the foothills, painting the sky in orange and lavender. The town lights blinked awake one by one. Ben started his route as he always did, a thermos of coffee. The radio turned low, the seat adjusted just so. The passengers were few. A young nurse heading home from the late shift, a man with a lunchbox, 2 college kids half asleep. Each of them got off quietly, the doors sighing open and shut like slow breathing. By 2:30 a.m., the bus was empty. Just him, the hum of the tires, and the steady rhythm of the wipers, brushing away light snow. He knew this road by heart, every curve, every flickering lamp, every mailbox leaning toward the wind. And up ahead through the mist, he saw it, that old streetlight. For a second, he thought maybe he'd imagined everything, that the wolf was just a story people told to feel better about the world. But as he pulled into the stop, there it was, standing right where it always had. The same gray coat dusted white with snow, the same stillness, the same steady gaze. Only now, Ben noticed something different, a faint scar across its muzzle, a sign of time, of survival. He parked, turned off the engine and opened the window. The cold air slid in sharp and clean. "You're still here," he said softly. "Guess neither of us knows when to quit." The wolf didn't move. Its ears twitched slightly, catching his voice. Ben reached into his pocket and took out the wallet, the same one the wolf had once pulled from the snow. He opened it, looked at the photo inside, his wife, smiling in the sunlight, hair blowing across her face. "She would have liked you," he murmured. "You're both stubborn about staying in the light." The wolf blinked, slow, deliberate, a gesture that almost looked like understanding. Snowflakes fell between them, drifting lazily through the glow. For a long moment, neither moved. The silence was complete, not empty, but full, like the pause before a song ends. Then Ben whispered, "Thank you for the company." The wolf turned its head toward the forest, took one small step back, then another. Just before the shadow swallowed it, it looked over its shoulder once more, eyes glinting gold under the lamplight. And then it was gone. Ben sat there a long while after that. The light hummed quietly above, and the snow thickened until the road disappeared beneath it. He finally started the engine, shifted into drive, and whispered, "Safe travels, old friend." The bus rolled forward, its headlights cutting through the snowfall. When he glanced in the rearview mirror, the streetlight was a fading dot behind him, a small island of warmth in the sea of white. 2 days later, Ben retired. He moved to his daughter's house near Denver, traded night roads for morning walks and the smell of brewing coffee. But every now and then, when he'd step outside before dawn, he'd listen. Really listen to the silence beyond the city. And once, just once, he thought he heard it again, a soft, distant howl carried on the wind. He smiled, eyes closed, coffee steaming in the cold air. Somewhere out there under another streetlight, the wolf was still watching. Spring came early that year. The heavy snows melted into thin silver streams, trickling down from the mountains and cutting through the fields. The air smelled of pine and wet earth again. Ben had been retired for almost 3 months. His days now started with the sun instead of the moon. He took morning walks, tended to the small garden behind his daughter's house, and sometimes drove her old pickup truck into town just to have coffee at the diner. The new driver on Route 17, a kid half Ben's age, occasionally stopped by for advice. One morning, he brought a folded newspaper and laid it on the counter. "Hey, Mr. Harris," he said, "you might want to see this." The headline read, "The Streetlight Wolf Returns." Ben blinked, then smiled. The article was short, just a few paragraphs. Someone had spotted the wolf again crossing the highway at dawn near that same stretch of road. It didn't harm anyone, didn't even linger. But the sighting stirred something in people. The town council voted to put up a small sign near the spot wildlife corridor, home of the streetlight wolf. The reporter wrote, "Locals say the wolf seems to appear when the town is quietest, as if guarding the edge of light." Ben folded the paper and chuckled softly. "Guarding the edge of light," he murmured. "Yeah, that sounds about right." In the months that followed, the story spread beyond the town. A wildlife organization used the footage in an awareness campaign about coexistence. Children in local schools painted murals, a gray wolf under a glowing lamp, snow falling like confetti around it. Tourists sometimes came at night hoping to see it. Most went home without a glimpse, but those who lingered swore they heard a soft howl from somewhere deep in the woods. And quietly, without anyone noticing, the fear began to fade. People started walking their dogs closer to the forest again. They stopped calling animal control every time they heard a howl. The wolf became less a warning and more a symbol. One late evening, Ben drove back to his old route. The bus stop was still there, the same streetlight still standing. The new sign gleamed beneath it, reflecting the headlights. He parked by the side of the road and stepped out. The air was cool, crisp, filled with the smell of pine. The night was perfectly still. He stood there a long while listening. Nothing, just the hum of the light and the whisper of the wind. He smiled to himself. Maybe it had moved on. Maybe it was out there raising pups somewhere safer, quieter. He started to turn back toward the truck, and then he heard it. A single low howl drifting across the distance. Not loud, not close, but enough to make the hair on his arms stand. He turned toward the sound, eyes searching the dark between the trees. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw movement, a flash of gray, a glint of gold eyes catching the lamplight, and then nothing. Just the steady glow of the bulb and the soft hiss of the wind through the branches. He didn't chase it. He didn't call out. He simply smiled, hands in his pockets, and whispered, "You're right where you belong." Later, when he drove away, the light in his rearview mirror looked different, warmer, somehow less lonely. And though no one ever saw the wolf again after that spring, its story remained. People still spoke of it at the diner in classrooms on quiet nights when the snow returned. They said it reminded them that not everything in the dark was dangerous. That kindness once shown could echo softly endlessly, like a howl carried through the hills.